Alright, let's go ahead and get started and get our knives right in. Knives Out stars so many people, but I'm just gonna list a few off the top of my head. Anna de Armas, which is arguably the main character, she does a really good job. Daniel Craig, Jamie Lee Curtis, and Chris Evans all play prominent roles in this movie. Of course, there are the other actors in the movie, but I mean, they do play a prominent role as well, but not as much as them. They play about as much of a role as Jamie Lee Curtis. There's so many to list. I'm not gonna sit here and list all of them. Knives Out plays out like a classic mystery drama movie, where you have a kind of cliche detective. Not really cliche. I mean, I don't think it falls into too many cliches, but you have a detective who's kind of trying to figure out this whole thing, and then by the end, it's a classic whodunit. And then by the end, you have this whole reveal, revisiting everything, and like kind of summing everything up into the final deduction, etc. Right off the bat, let's start off with great performances. I really enjoyed most of the performances in this movie, especially by Ana de Armas and Daniel Craig. Although Daniel Craig's southern accent in this movie it wasn't bad at all. Like it was just funny, very noticeable. I mean, it does become the butt of a couple jokes here and there, but for the most part, all the performances were pretty well done, especially with portraying each individual's like characteristic and whatnot. There's some very good writing being done here. All of the possible motivations for why they might murder this person is thoroughly looked through. Not thoroughly looked through, but it's at least looked at to the point to where you can see why any one of these people might actually kill the person. Now, of course, there's always reasons for somebody to kill somebody, but for the most part, you're probably not going to. Somebody could cut in line in front of me. That's some of these reasons. They're not bad at all. It's just that's just like that was the first thing that came to mind, honestly. But for the most part, they do have like a decent reason to possibly kill this person. But that's why it becomes a interesting story to figure out who actually carried through with that act. There was a slight issue with storytelling, but I'll come back to that later whenever I talk about the cons. And there is also great directing work. Some really pretty shots with cinematography being done here. Overall, good looking movie, no complaints there. And coming back to the story for 1 second, it does have a decent ending as well. I did enjoy the way it ended, kind of segueing into cons a bit here. My main issue with the story was during the third act of the movie, there's like a certain like reveal that happens where it kind of makes it seem you aren't sure where the movie's gonna go at that point. Maybe I'm just too dumb, but I mean, I was trying to pay attention, and once it reveals something, the movie just feels like there's nowhere left for it to go. Of course, there's questions that are unanswered at that point, but it's a bit harder to tell like why they're still going at that point. And during this time, they're essentially just setting everything up for the end, so that you can have this big reveal. And I felt like it could have done a bit better during that part. The end was great. The end was nice. It did a nice payoff. If a bit predictable, which is another issue, slightly predictable. The character who you might think it is probably going to be them, but it's still a decent payoff just because you have this whole like the whole detective thing where like he's going over everything and there's this whole recap of everything to tie everything into together, and it's really nice. I quite enjoyed it, but that third act is what brings it down slightly for me, just because it feels like it's a bit slow, even though it's trying to set things up. Last issue I have, sort of an issue. The characters are a little bit too reliant on their characteristics. It makes me think of something like My Hero Academia. This may be a weird comparison, but I just keep thinking of My Hero Academia, where each individual person has their own quirk. In that world, it's their superpower, but like in this movie, their quirk is just their characteristic. One person's angry, he gets pretty angry easily or something. Another person is like a health guru and stuff like that, etc. And then everybody kind of falls into that role, and that's pretty much all they are for the most part. There isn't really more development for any of the characters. I mean, not that you need any development except for who actually did it and the kind of main characters. But even then, it feels like everybody kind of falls into like their quirks. For example, Ana de Armas' character, she throws up whenever she lies, which is a very convenient quirk, very convenient thing to have when you're in a movie about who did this crime, and there's a whole cast of characters trying to figure out who did it. Very convenient, but I mean, it's just what it is, I guess. Either way, the movie is genuinely fun. There's one of my favorite jokes in there with Daniel Craig. Daniel Craig's character, he plays the investigator, and he's talking about donuts, and I don't want to spoil the joke, but it's probably one of my favorite jokes. Otherwise, I genuinely enjoyed this movie. I'm going to give this movie a 10 out of 12 eggs, which is going to be a golden omelet. And yeah, it's good. Go watch it. I'd suggest it. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed, make sure to drop a like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Boink. Oh, I don't know why I did that.